Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amanda Petrusich. I'm a staff writer at the magazine. On behalf of everyone at The New Yorker, I want to welcome you to the 26th Annual New Yorker Festival. It is my great pleasure, of course, to be in conversation tonight with Lucy Dacus and Rufus Wainwright. I want to start by asking how you two know each other.
I knew you before you know me. I don't know if I told you this, I saw you play in 2012 with Ingrid Michaelson opening at Wolf Trap in Vienna, Virginia. And I was fully a teenager and like busking a lot at Virginia Beach with my friend Allie. And we went to your show. Allie was a big Ingrid Michaelson fan, and I didn't know your music at the time. And they were like, oh, we could see Ingrid and then leave or something. And then I was like, no. You came on stage and I was just listening to your songs and I was like, I'm not missing a single song. And I mean, yeah, it's very special when you don't know a song and it gets to you immediately, especially in a live setting. So yeah, it's cool to be here for me.
Well, thank you so much. The first time I met Lucy was actually at the Grammys. I had been nominated a couple of times, but I had never gone. The first time was for my Judy record, and I didn't win. And then I also, and then the second time was during COVID, so I didn't go for that. But then the third time, for the Folkocracy record, I decided to go, and I'd never been to the actual show, and because I presented an award at one point, they gave me a special seat, like right in the hub of where everything was happening, and I was completely blown away by just being in the nebulous world of show business. All of a sudden, and everybody was there, and that's when I met you and Boy Genius, and you kind of surrounded me, and you like protected me from like rap stars and trying to get to Meryl Streep. It was just very glamorous. It was incredibly glamorous. And then, of course, we had coffee, which was a little more down to earth.
You also gave us, let's not undercut, you handed us the Grammys that we won.
Yeah.
And we were like on stage, I don't know if you remember this, but before we got there, I was like, love you. Like walking
There
up
is
to you.
incredible footage of Rufus presenting Best Rock Performance to Boy Genius at the Grammys, and I don't know where you guys were sitting. It seemed at some remove from the stage. There's amazing video of Lucy just sort of booking it down the aisle right toward you to get there. That was your first Grammy, right?
Yes.
Oh.
First makes it sound like it's gonna, I don't know.
Hate you.
First and last, I don't know. We were really far from the stage, and I just had this thought like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take forever. They're just gonna be watching us, like. So I was just like, let's get down there.
Well, that year for me was particularly poignant, as in sad, because I had decided, as I said, I'd been nominated for a couple of Grammys, and I hadn't won, and then I thought, well, maybe I should do a folk music album, because I noticed that there was a lot of categories, and I was from a folk background. So I said, oh, that'll be easy, I'll do it. And it was the year that I decided to make a folk record. Joni Mitchell decided to make a folk record. And Paul Simon, the two of them.
Jerks.
So as I was presenting her award, I saw them wheeling up Joni Mitchell to accept hers that was
award.
Supposed to be mine. So, anyways, she deserved it.
Give Rufus a Grammy.
So you are both undoubtedly queer icons. You also write a lot of love songs. And Lucy, you have been doing this remarkable thing recently where you became legally ordained, and you've been marrying people on stage. 3 weeks ago, you married 9 couples, I think, on stage at Forest Hills in the middle of your show. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how and why that started.
Well, it's not that fun of an answer. Basically, just looking down the barrel, wondering if it's going to be possible for everyone to get married who wants to. Who knows? Maybe marriage equality will stay. It could not. And it wasn't required to be gay to do this, but I have a lot of awesome gay fans, and I think maybe 80% of the couples were queer, and it was just nice to do. Yeah.
When we were in Los Angeles together earlier this year, and I got to watch you direct the video for Best Guess, A Single Off Forever is a Feeling. That song is incredibly romantic, I think, but it's also a little bit of an argument against the idea of a soulmate. You know, you're letting uncertainty into the room a little bit with that, you know, the chorus says, "You're my best guess at the future." Not a terrible wedding vow, incidentally. Can you talk a little bit about those lyrics and the sort of sentiment expressed in that song?
Yeah, it's pretty plain, you know, like, I can't promise anything because nobody really can, but having like a gut feeling that it might stay that way is enough for the present moment. And I think through my life until recently, like the idea that I can't promise something would like keep me from engaging with it. And that just keeps you from so many beautiful things. And just going wholeheartedly into something knowing that it might not last is very brave. And I see that happening with all these couples that I've been marrying, is like they're making this decision really quickly. Like I think I posted the link like 3 days before our first date of tour, and like 7 couples made that decision in that 3-day period. And I just think it's ballsy and cool, and like love will not stay the same, but why not just like give it everything you have while it's there?
It's a beautiful idea. Rufus, you have a very gorgeous song, one of my favorites of yours, called Peaceful Afternoon. Yes. That sort of nods at the same idea, but between sex and death and trying to keep the kitchen clean, remember wild roses bloom best in ruin, which is such a gorgeous lyric. You've been married for 13 years. Do you have any advice to Lucy's newlyweds?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I've been with my husband Jorn for almost 20, and we've been married for 13. And look, I think what's my favorite sort of marriage story in general as a queer person, and when it really kind of struck me, is that many years ago, a friend of mine, Van Dyke Parks, who's a great producer and musician from LA anyways, but he was celebrating his, I think it was his 50th anniversary with his wife, or 30th anniversary, a big number. And I turned to him and I said, "Wow, did you think you'd be married for 30 years? And he went, "Rufus, marriage is forever. I mean, that's the point." And it kind of struck me that just did not exist in my mind. Like as a gay person, I had no kind of blueprint to refer to in terms of that whole concept. So after Jorn and I were together for about 5 years, we decided to get married, and yeah, it is this thing of I think probably now after 13 years. And 20 years together, I think the one thing that really is so special about it and great, but also quite difficult and challenging, is you really have to work hard to keep it going. You know, you really have to do every possible thing you can to make it last. And you know, it may or may not in the end, but you really have to fight for it, and that's important to do for anything you're passionate about.
So you've both spoken. You can cheers for that. No, it's such true and good advice. So you've both spoken about feeling some level of dissonance with your families, specifically as it relates to coming of age as a queer person. Lucy, you were adopted. We've talked about this. Grew up in a very religious household. Rufus, you've also spoken about feeling tension with your parents surrounding your sexuality. I'm curious for each of you, how did you metabolize that, and how, if at all, has it influenced your work or who you are as artists?
Okay, I'll go first. What can I say? My parents, sadly my mother is no longer with us, the great Kate McGarrigle. Yes, but Loudon is still, he still sings and and performs. And we actually have a wonderful relationship now, him and I, and we've worked very hard to create that. I do sort of, though, like to, how should I say, own the fact that my parents were terrible when I came out. They were both terrible. My mother, a little worse. I mean, she wanted to kick me out of the house. She, all of her kind of latent Catholic stuff came out. My dad just didn't want to address it at all and pretended like nothing was happening, or would ask me very strange questions at very odd times, and whatever. Neither of them did a very good job. That being said, they get a bit of a hall pass because AIDS was happening at that time, and I was 13 when I knew what was going on. So I think everybody was just scared shitless, regardless. Yeah, what the unfortunate thing is that it's a kind of wound that never heals. I mean, as much as my mother would want to say sorry, or my father. It's a constant wound that you have to sort of really be cognizant of. Really, I think probably until you die. But but that also makes you, there's gifts in that as well. You become more emotional, you become more sensitive to things, and you certainly become more creative. So yeah. So thanks for fucking me up. Okay.
Oh my God, I was just listening and not thinking about what I was going to say. Well, I wouldn't like to have found out the way my mom found out, which is that I kind of accidentally came out to NPR. Because someone asked me directly. Actually, someone was asking me about Julian, who I'm with, and we were just becoming friends at the time, and they were like, "What do you have in common?" And I was like, "Oh, we both, are religious and Southern, and we're both queer." And my mom saw that and called me. I was like, "You're not queer. What do you mean queer? That's a bad word." Also, in her time, calling somebody queer was mean, whereas I feel like that's the best word for me. And yeah, time just worked on it. I actually saw her this morning, got breakfast with her and Richard, who's here, her longtime friend. And I think that I don't have kids, but I imagine when they are becoming themselves, you feel like you have the right to know first because you know everything so far. But as a kid, it's it's very special to know that and keep it in a way so that it's not anyone else's property. And yeah, luckily time has worked on it.
Rufus, I wanted to ask you a little bit about a period in the early 90s when you were just beginning your career. I'd imagine what you were doing, kind of making this highly melodic, sort of playful music that was rooted in the American songbook, rooted in opera. It must have felt at odds in some fundamental way with the zeitgeist at that moment. I mean, it certainly wasn't grunge. How did you sort of navigate that disconnect?
Well, when they make the movie, there will be scenes from that period in the 90s, early 90s, when I was in New York, I was in Manhattan, and sending my tapes to all these kind of grunge bars, and then going to collect them the next day because they were just, sorry, this isn't going to work. And I had a little bow tie on and stuff, and playing piano and listening to opera. No, it did not work, what I was doing at all. And because at the time, especially, that was really the birth, at least in my little neck of the woods, of Jeff Buckley. He was the god of downtown. And so I hated his guts. I never felt like I fit in. It was really when I went to California and I got more into sort of the Beach Boys thing, or Brian Wilson and Harry Nilsson, and that kind of tradition of more kind of psychedelic thing where it worked out well for me. That being said, I did end up hanging out one night with Jeff Buckley, and unfortunately he died a couple of weeks later. But that one, I was so happy that I got to meet him, because I had harbored such resentment from that period. I wouldn't listen to any of his records. I wouldn't go see any of his shows, But then when I met him and we had this amazing evening, it was such a lesson because I realized how stupid I'd been by harboring that kind of resentment towards another artist and how we just have to be, we're all on the same team kind of thing. So yeah.
Lucy, have you ever had a moment like that where you felt
Where I met Jeff
competitive?
No, a moment where I feel humbled or.
No, competitive.
Oh, competitive.
Where you looked at what someone
Okay.
else was doing and thought, oh, wait a second.
I have not.
Good answer. Perfect answer. We'll move on. Rufus, you've also talked about that period. Your first 3 albums or so as a time when you were maybe a little bit wild and a little bit lost. I think there's this pervasive and maybe not entirely untrue idea that chaos can be really generative for an artist, that pain can be really generative for an artist. Did you find that it fed your songwriting?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I look. I don't recommend getting lost and doing all sorts of horrible things. But if you do, you'll just use it. No, I don't know. I mean, I think whatever it is that I did, and it is whatever anybody does, in whatever way you do it, is that it has to be matched with work and discipline, and a sense of purpose and a sense of getting up and getting the job done. So I think any of that kind of like decadence and stuff was always coupled with a real work ethic. So, but yes, I did chose to go down that line, that path, and yeah.
You're back.
I'm back.
The
I'm
path
back. I'm
leads
back.
here.
Lucy, what about you? Is there a state of mind that you find particularly conducive to songwriting, whether it be boredom or contentment or anger or I don't know, heart sickness?
I think emptiness and like liminal spaces. I write a lot when I'm walking, and I think being out of context. Actually, I saw Zadie Smith speak on the stage yesterday, and she said that about writing, that like writing on a plane, like being out of context is very helpful, and I feel the same way. A context can be very like heavy. But there's also something about walking, like it stimulates both sides of your brain. It's kind of like EMDR light. So when you're walking, everything's knocking around in there, which is a good recipe for.
I love walking and writing.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Great.
They say for reporters, it's always really great to interview a subject while they're driving a car because they will be sort of just distracted enough.
You can get whatever you want from
something
them.
sort of opens up. Maybe it's a similar kind of thing. I don't know. Your conscious mind gets kind of occupied by the work of walking, and I don't know, something loosens in you. I mean, that makes sense to me.
I have a very strange thing that happens where I like to write a lot backstage before I do a show.
Oh, me too.
And I get kind of wrapped up in the songwriting process, and I forget that I'm backstage and that I have a show. And I swear to God, it's like clockwork. Every time, it's like 2 minutes before I have to go on stage, I'll get like a great idea, and then they're like, "You're on," and then I have to. I don't know. It's like a strange game that the muses play with me, where they. Yeah, so my life's really tough.
Do you ever write while you're on stage?
I don't do that. No, do you do that? Wow.
I had this crazy experience. The first show of this album tour was in Philly, and this was like, yeah, fact check, New Yorker fact check, yes. I wrote I just put out like 10 more songs and versions of the songs. It's called like the archive or whatever, but there's one new song called Losing, and I wrote that the first night of touring in my head while I was singing a different song, and I had never had that experience, and it was quite scary. I was just like, how is my brain doing both things? I hope I remember this. I'm just having kind of like a parallel conversation. I don't know if I like it, but you just have to listen whenever you're meant to.
Take that, AI.
Yeah.
ChatGPT could never. I think you're both obviously each such powerful vocalists, but you also do a lot with restraint. I feel like there's always a lot of air in the work, and I wanted to ask each of you how you think about quiet or blank space as a creative tool.
The most important thing is quiet. I say that wholeheartedly, and I think it's been that. I think it's Mozart who said that or something. I mean, it's really the spaces in between.
It's like the organization of silence.
Yeah,
right?
that's I don't know that where everything is happening. So it's very important to me. And you were saying downstairs when we did the mini New Yorker interview. It was like for social media downstairs. But then I thought they said this was the mini New Yorker interview. And we were
this
on like
is the big.
This is the big one. Okay, good. We're at the big one. Good. But you said it was silence. Something I thought it was very sweet, wanting more silence. Yeah.
Yeah. The question we pulled out of a bag, and I was like, "What have you learned about yourself this year?" And I was like, "I need so much more silence than I thought I did." And you just like, how do you synthesize all of this without pausing? Like, I'm just realizing I haven't been. So.
Actually, not to get too, I mean, if we're on the subject of silence, it's quite intense, but my mother, the late, great Kay McGarrigle, who was an incredible songwriter, incredible pianist, she played banjo and everything. She passed away from cancer, and she spent a lot of time writing near the end of her life, and certain songs and stuff, and reading, but mostly writing. She wrote an amazing song called Proserpina about the Persephone myth. Anyways, but that happened. But then, really, at the last week, you couldn't have any music. There had to be complete silence, because it was just, that is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, Lucy, you briefly used the phrase "the organization of silence." A minute ago. Is that that's part of your songwriting process? I mean, that's a lovely way to think about putting a song together.
I've found that any line that you write and then you put a pause after it, if you show it to people, they say back the line that has the pause after it. They say, "Oh, this line." And I'm like, I think it was the pause that let you listen to that. And I have a bunch of like extremely wordy songs. Like I'm breathing, like all my breaths are so specific because there's only a few times when they can happen in a song, for some of them. But yeah, I think I'm realizing I need to be paying attention to that more because it is always pretty effective.
I'm curious for each of you, to what extent does songwriting feel sometimes like a sort of supernatural conjuring? And to what extent does it feel like a job?
I personally think that if it started to feel like a job, I'd have to quit the job. However, writing for other people is the best job. I love it. Like, I listen to anyone I write with, I'll listen to everything they've done chronologically, and I try to get in their head of like what they've already said, what they like to talk about, what they might be sick of. Like, are they adventurous, or are they trying to get even deeper into an idea? And yeah, that feels more like a job. It feels so much easier because there's like this set context. Whereas for my stuff, it's like I don't even get to ask myself if I like it or not. I just have to do it.
I mean, I unfortunately think it's completely, spiritual and messages from the gods, and I get totally wrapped up and possessed by it, and it kind of ruins my life at times. But I have that kind of sense with it. That being said, recently I did a musical. I wrote a musical called Opening Night, which was in London, and I was working with Ivo van Hove, this very Belgian director, and very good, but also very Belgian. And And anyways, but I was really put to my paces. Like I had to write songs that corresponded to the plot or to what the character was feeling, and I had to kind of get out of the whole kind of celestial connection that I was feeling with lyrics and melodies. It had to sort of translate to a very, basic, on a basic level. And that was a great exercise, and to make it a little less holy and stuff. So I enjoyed sort of that, shifting it for that. I enjoyed that.
I'm also curious for each of you, have you ever had the experience of learning something about yourself from the process of songwriting? It's something that you wouldn't have discovered any other way, but became evident to you through a lyric or a melody, some sort of lightning strike of self-discovery that emerged from the work.
I would say almost every song. That's also, I would say, why I write songs anyways, is to just figure out what I think or what I feel, which is hard to do. Maybe some people find it easy, but I don't find it easy without this other thing. Yeah, there's a song I'm gonna play later that I wrote and broke up with someone after writing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about me. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. No, I mean, what I have realized of late, and I'm a little older. I'm now 52, and I've been doing this since I was 12. Really, that was my first single I released when I was 12, and I sang before that with my mother and stuff. But anyway, so I've been doing it a long time, and what I have definitely discovered over the last few years, and this is also especially after having a kid, where you have someone who has absolutely no interest in what you do, and is totally like nonplussed by your entire existence, in certain ways. But I kind of felt that I had created this pretty vicious machine of, feeling sad, writing a song about it, kind of feeling more powerful, I guess. Not necessarily better, but more powerful, and then riding on that power and other people doing it, and then getting tired, and then a little sad, and then a song, and it's quite diabolical. And I think what I've mainly learned is that, yes, I'm happy that exists, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that, and I don't think I'll stop. That being said, you gotta be able to get off the hamster wheel a little bit, and that's sort of something that now, as an older person, I'm realizing, like, you just gotta take time off and do nothing for 5 seconds and not worry about it. So if anything, I've learned just that I'm a human being and that I need to sort of take care of myself,
That's not a bad lesson. Well, it sort of segues into my next question, which is one thing I've always found really fascinating about the musician's life is that it's kind of inherently demarcated into eras. I mean, even since long before Taylor Swift gave that concept a name. A record comes out, there's a feeling to it, there's an aesthetic, there's a look, there's a statement of intent, there's a tour, it's a moment in time. Then you start over, essentially. I would imagine that can be both challenging and also sort of thrilling. So I wanted to ask you both, how do you manage the pressure of reinvention?
I know, like pay 15% of your income to somebody to figure it out. No.
I was gonna say, like,
yeah, God bless the agents and managers.
I forget if someone told me this in high school, or if I just thought it in high school. Like, you don't have to try to have a personality; you just have one. Like, you can work on it, or you can change however you want, but like, it doesn't take effort to be a person, because like, you could stop putting in the effort, and there you are, still being a person. And so I don't really personally feel it as pressure to evolve, because if anything, like, sometimes life is so good and you want to push pause and be like, I'm done evolving. I'm good with this. But then like the evolving just comes for you anyways. And so that's actually the tension, is the wanting to stay in one place and never being allowed to in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. You both make music that kind of exists, I suppose, on the periphery of what I would maybe call pop, and therefore somewhat on the periphery of the marketplace. I mean, Rufus, maybe we can start with you. How much do you think about... How much do you think about or even covet that sort of big, broad commercial success? I mean, of someone, again, like Taylor Swift. Like, do you regard that and think like, oh, interesting? Or do you think not for me?
Well, I mean, I have a very bizarre kind of tale attached to my career, where, you know, I was signed to DreamWorks Records, which at the time in the mid '90s was the biggest entertainment company in the universe. I mean, everybody, they had the film, they had animation, and it was right at the beginning, and I was the first artist signed to that label, and it was a whole kind of parade of people just wanting to know me and have, and I hadn't even put out a record yet. So I kind of started with that. Then I, you know, made the records that I wanted to make, and I was working with, you know, Lenny Waronker, who's made great records with Randy Newman and Mo Austin, all these classic record people. And so I was, but it was like probably the last time that had ever occurred in that fashion, because nobody else was going through that. So I was really spoiled, and thus given sort of this terrible misconception that, you know, you have to constantly try to, you know, have a hit and stuff, when those weren't the records that I was making at all. So yeah, it's a nightmare, and but I love it, and yeah, this next record's gonna be a huge hit, and I'm gonna make billions of dollars. So
hell yeah!
Help!
Lucy, what about you? I mean, what's your relationship to that?
The marketplace?
I don't know, to fame, celebrity, to sort of...
Do whatever it takes.
Okay, yeah.
There's success on an
kind of
overwhelming
like,
scale.
there's so many ways to talk about this. Like, if you were just talking about money, I think it's something that everyone experiences, like the fear of not having enough, especially as things get more expensive and housing is more scarce and food is more expensive, and we feel as though the government is failing us, and like, I don't know, I can get really spirally about things like that. And also this job, you don't get hired or fired, you just are doing something and people either care or not. And that also feels very emotional, because you also could work on something for 10 years or 10 minutes and there'd be a way different, like there's nothing concrete. So I guess I have had fear come in plenty in my life in that case. But I do think that you can go about almost anything in a way that you can still make yourself proud. Like I'm calling you guys out. You have like shirts of mine, and I walked out and I was like, oh my God, cool. And like, I hope you keep that and it's not trash to you. Like, you know, you can make something with heart. Like, I would not say I have the same amount of heart in a shirt that I do a song, but still something that you can be proud of and hope that somebody actually wants. The same as music. Like, you make it for one reason and hope that people incorporate it into their lives. And I don't know. There's really so many ways I could be talking about this, but I'm gonna just leave it there.
I've always found it so fucking cool that Boy Genius sort of went on hiatus, right? Like, almost at the exact peak of Boy Genius frenzy was when you guys realized, like, well, we need a break. We're just gonna sort of take a pause on this. I think that was incredibly courageous and cool.
Well, we decided that it would be over after a year before it started. So before anyone heard it was happening, we knew when it was ending. And that informed all of our decisions about what we would do, because that pace was unsustainable. And I think if we were like, oh, we're gonna be doing this consistently forever, we would have been really much more intimidated. But we were like, that sounds fun. Let's do it. We got the time. That sounds fun. And we had to start saying no from the beginning. And that was a good lesson to see, like, you can say no a lot and still have a good time. Like, you can miss out on things and not have missed out on life. And it was also just good for our relationships to know that we were not mining each other for our own jobs or resources. Like, it was never the point, and yeah, felt very healthy. I don't know how that applies to other jobs, but whatever practice anyone could make for themselves, like, I recommend it.
Lucy, Boy Genius has a beautiful song called Leonard Cohen. Rufus, you have a daughter with Cohen's daughter, Lorca, and of course you have famously covered Hallelujah, which was just used at a Trump rally, by the way. Yes.
There's more to that story.
Yeah. Do
you want to?
Sure. Yeah.
No, I
it's
mean,
not my question. But,
okay.
Yeah. But yes. But please, yes, because you were quite vocal about saying. Like,
Well, no, but they used it in a Trump rally before he won the election, and it was one of those rallies where he was dancing around and he was DJing basically for his followers. And Hallelujah was one of the songs. Anyway, so that happened, and I went on the news and talked about it a little bit here and there, and that was fine. That was it. Anyways, he wins the election, Trump, and one of the first people down was Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. So he went down. About a week later, I got a call from Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, saying, who I don't know that well, though he is a music fan, it seems. And
that well.
Yeah. And anyways, but he called me and he went, Rufus, I just need to tell you something kind of funny. I was like, what is it? He's like, well, I was at Mar-a-Lago, and I was sitting next to Trump, and there was music playing, and then all of a sudden a version of Hallelujah came on, but it was Andrea Bocelli singing Hallelujah, at which point Trump turned to Justin Trudeau and said, you know Rufus Wainwright's version, right? And Justin said, and you have to also know, like, I'm talking to Justin Trudeau, so I'm like, okay. And then Justin goes, yeah, he said that to me, and then I said to him, yes, I love Rufus Wainwright's version, but you have to give Jeff Buckley some credit because he was the first person to cover the song. And I'm like, huh? Like,
bro.
At which point, Justin then goes, and Trump looked at me and went, oh, Jeff Buckley, no. Anyways, and then apparently 20 minutes later, Trump walked up to Justin and said, you know what? Rufus Wainwright's version is really the best version of Hallelujah. And Justin was like, yes, whatever you say.
I will say, one of my friends here said that yesterday, and he is not a rapist, racist,
I know.
piece of shit. So
I know.
other people
Whatever.
think that.
I figured if I would tell that story, this is a good place to do it. But what other
I'm
questions?
very glad you did. What I wanted to ask you is about each of you, your relationship to Cohen's work. I mean, I certainly hear echoes of it in both of your discographies. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what those songs have meant to you.
I'll go first because it's probably less deep. He's one of those guys that I heard his name and I knew of his place in culture before the music, and in a way, so many people claimed him so deeply that I felt behind. This happens a lot where people, like, fandoms are so intense that I'm like, well, that's a group that I'm just not a part of. And then you realize you're allowed to listen to the records at any time. And so I got into him, like, later and was just so blown away. He's so funny. He's so dark. He loves hot women. And
Who doesn't?
Yeah, like Chelsea Hotel is just one of the best written songs I think ever, and I just like that he had this like sense of darkness and humor, and like I guess in Boy Genius there's sort of this awareness of darkness and having a sense of humor that I'm not gonna compare, but still it feels like a nice guidepost.
Oh, well, yeah. I actually, I didn't know his music that well at all. It was really Martha, my sister, was a big Leonard Cohen fan as a teenager. I was more into opera. Anyways, but then years later, I finally met him, and what can I say? I do consider the time that we had together, though it wasn't a ton of time, to be pretty formative in terms of things he would say. Like he'd say things like, Rufus, Jesus said, it's more important what comes out of your mouth than what goes into it. Things like, little things like that. So I had like little nuggets like that at breakfast, and I prize the relationships that we had. But what I would say, and the legacy that I myself try to uphold, and that I do feel is somewhat under threat, and is not at the highest standard these days, is lyrics. I mean, song lyrics are. We got to do better with the song lyrics, I think, in general. Because for me, lyrics are the hardest part by far. And the bar is so high. I mean, whether it's Leonard or Dylan or anybody, like it used to be very, what a gauche to not have a good lyric. Now it's become kind of the usual thing. But yeah. So I think his lyrics need to be more emulated and more. We got to do it again.
We have to get you writing record reviews for The New Yorker, I think. I'm curious how each of you think about your relationship to performance and to touring in particular. How do you prepare for a tour? How do you stay sane out there?
Wait, can I just say, the show I saw you play in 2012 was amazing. Started with all these candles. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Well, you can speak to that, but you also came out in a kimono, in like a robe, and
that
I
was
just
a
like
solo one. Nobody was allowed to applaud and everything. Oh yeah, yes, yeah, that was.
So
yeah.
I guess my short answer is like I try to give a good performance, but also in life I want to be performing less all the time, in whatever I'm doing, including being on stage. Like the less performing, the better I feel. Whether that will end up being nice for other people or not, but you have this huge presence when you're performing, and like I remember these things from then. So you answer this.
Oh God. Well, that was the Songs for Lulu show, which was right after my mother had passed away, and I did this show where I wouldn't allow the audience to applaud at all. And which was
Why not? What was the?
Well, I wanted it to be like a leader, like a German song cycle where there was no, whatever. But I also wanted to annoy people. But there was so many reasons. I also wanted to get lost in it. I wanted to just sort of go somewhere else. Anyways, but in terms of preparing, oh God, and performance, I don't know. The one thing I will say, which I've been thinking about a lot, is there's some great line in music where I think it was either like Jelly Roll Morton or some great pianist from the jazz age would play, and then he'd be like, "Shoot me, shoot me, somebody shoot me," and it is this thing of like, yes, shoot me. I will never be happier than I am now. This is. And that's kind of where I try to get when I perform, where I'm like, I am released, so please kill me now. So, might as well just accept it.
You might, based on what you just said, you might both have different answers to this question, but I'm curious, what feels like the truest version of a song to you? Is it the recorded version that's on the record, or is it what happens when you're on the stage?
Not over what you said. You're so iconic. It's crazy. The truest. Well, I feel like there's a lot of different types of truth, right? Like how fiction expresses a lot of truth, and maybe nonfiction even has a harder time expressing truth because it purports to express truth. So.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think they're so different. They're like two such different animals.
Yeah.
I think for performing, I can't even relate the two of them to a recording and to a performance. Personally, but I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
if I had to pick one as a viewer,
Yeah.
live. Actually, I saw Big Thief last night in Lomelda, who I love. It was so good. I don't know if you were at that, but it was awesome. And as being a fan of theirs for a long time and having played shows with them when like 16 people were there, and now it's like 12,000 people, you know, hearing the first chord of a song and going, woo, like that recognition, woo. It was amazing. Why am I talking about this? Oh, they play the songs differently night to night because they can and they're familiar with them. And so it's maybe not one or the other, but it's paying attention to the relationship between every iteration that you hear. And like, maybe it's like each time you listen is one stroke of the painting. And if you go back and back again, you get the whole picture. Like if you let it follow you through your life, it's just this very rich experience that you can have with a song. That's why I think like covering, like Hallelujah, so many people have covered it. I like to cover songs that have been covered a lot because it's just participating in a life of the song that is ultimately, how cool would it be if like people know it and forget any human name attached to it, like a hymn. I think maybe I talked about that with you one time. Hanging out.
No, absolutely. Okay, so it is my belief that spiritually you are both somehow New Yorkers. You feel like New Yorkers to me, but it is also true that you both live in Los Angeles.
Yes, we do.
I was hoping you could each talk a little bit about what inspires you about LA.
Look, I love New York, and I was born in Rhinebeck, upstate, and my family lives here. My dad still lives here and stuff, and so I had some great times in my life here, and I still have a place out in Montauk, so that is really home in a lot of ways. But that being said, Hollywood for me is really the kind of, I don't know, it's the most wonderful, horrifying, disgusting, thrilling, exciting, terrible, tacky thing. I don't know. I'm so obsessed with Hollywood. And I mean like old Hollywood, 70s Hollywood, present Hollywood. That whole ridiculous notion of it I find endlessly fascinating and kind of comforting in this world we live in today. I feel like, though I adore New York, I actually feel like Los Angeles has much more of a relation to the just craziness that we're experiencing in the United States right now. It's if you look at it through that lens, and so I find it, So I find it comforting, and I also find that all those ghosts are still there, like Betty Davis and Joan Crawford and I don't know. So that's my thing with Hollywood. What about you?
I'm surprised I seem like a New Yorker to you, because I've never lived here. As a kid, I wanted to live here because I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and it was on the bus line, and I would like take the overnight bus and like sleep in the Times Square McDonald's overnight, and then spend the day, and then come back. And but yeah, there's something about LA that is so different from anything that I've known, that I feel completely clean, that like I feel unrelated to it. And it's sort of that like contextless thing. I'm sure as I live there longer, like context will start to encroach, but it's very easy to write because even the trees are not for me. Like everything about it is not me. And that is really freeing. And because of the earthquakes there, they don't build buildings very high in most of the town, so the sky is huge. And I just look at the sky so much. And here the sky's so tiny. You have to like really like you have to go find it.
Little
so that's
Sky
another
Country,
thing.
as it's known. I think of you as a New Yorker because you read so much, and I have decided New York, we've claimed reading.
Yeah. It's y'all in Chicago.
I am amazed at how much you read and how much you know about literature. It's really encouraging.
Lucy is the most well-read person I know.
No,
Don't say that.
Oh, gosh.
It's very, very inspiring, actually.
You're well-read, too.
I try.
You read a
I
lot
try.
of,
I try.
Yeah.
It's taken me a year to read Middlemarch.
It's a long book.
That's about right.
Yeah. Okay, I have 2 more questions for you guys. So this is my warning to all of you. Text your cues now, because we will be upon them soon. Here's sort of a funny question. Rufus, so you and your sister Martha famously host a holiday-themed benefit concert every December. I know Lucy is joining you this year. So Lucy, you filmed an episode of Amoeba's What's in My Bag recently, and you picked Sufjan Stevens' Songs for Christmas, a collection that I also love. But you said this thing that was really funny. You said you hate Christmas. And then this also made me laugh. You described it as an unlikable time of year.
Did I say that?
We have some fact checkers in the audience who could confirm for me. But I'm curious sort of what you two have planned for that evening, if you can talk about it. And also just more generally, sort of how you feel about that holiday and holidays in general.
We were just starting to talk about it downstairs, upstairs? Where are we? Downstairs.
In the mini New Yorker area.
Yeah, in the mini New York area. I'm gonna do whatever you say. I'm in your car.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the show that we're doing, it's called Hooray for Holidays, and also Beck's gonna do it, and Jake Wesley Rogers, a bunch of other people, Martha Loudon, and it's for us it's very early in the season. It's December 6th, so it's more just a general festival of light and the beginning of several types of holidays. But in terms of Christmas, yeah, I mean, I love it, but a lot of this has to do with the fact that my mother, our mother Kate, she decided at a certain point that she wanted to do a Christmas show with the kids, and we were very, very young. My sister and I, we were about my cousins were about 5 and 6, and I was a little older. But and there's a performer named Leon Redbone, and this was back in the 80s, and she, my aunt and mother said, well, we're gonna open for him at Town Hall, and this was a big deal for like a folk people to play the Town Hall, like Mighty Wind, like that. So they were all excited for Town Hall, and so we had one show before Town Hall, which was at the Town Crier, which is upstate. And none of the kids wanted to rehearse. None of us wanted to learn any songs. None of us wanted to do any harmonies. We just were screwing around, and my mother and aunt could not control us. So we had one rehearsal before the show at the Town Crier, and when I was rehearsing, and it was on the day of the show. So at a certain point, my mother and my aunt gave up and started drinking, and we all showed up at the gig, and my mother and aunt were totally trashed, and they had the little kids with them, and they just threw us on stage, and they started playing banjos, and we didn't know what parts to sing, and then people were asking for their money back, like the cops were like what's going on? Anyways, the next day we rehearsed and learned all our parts, and we did a wonderful show at Town Hall. So I think it's the trauma, just continuing the trauma. Just continue the trauma, and so
Such
welcome back.
Yeah.
Happy holidays. Okay, Lucy, I have to ask you about this because it's been all over social media the last few days. You had a conversation with Janelle Monáe recently, in which they said that they traveled back in time and to the 70s and saw David Bowie perform. I thought you handled it with a lot of grace and composure because really, who knows what is possible in life? What was going through your mind? And do either of you believe in time travel?
I believe Janelle Monáe time travels. And
Me too.
yeah, if anyone is going to be time traveling, it's that guy. It just at first I was like, you saw David Bowie, because he kept doing shows, I think, until 2004. Just thinking you literally maybe saw the last record, and that is not the case. So my slow, non-time traveling brain definitely had like a, is that, okay, yeah, we're time traveling. Got it. And I mean, I think that, like, in a way, maybe this is available to all of us in some way. It like kind of opened my mind to just like, do I just think time travel is not possible? Like, I need to ask more questions. I'm going to
Open your
her. I don't know
third
what I'm doing
eye.
for Christmas, but I know I'm going to her Halloween party. So I will continue to research this for the class.
Incredible. Rufus, any time traveling for you?
Oh God, I need to figure out now. Really, look. I spend a lot of time in opera, listening to opera. Opera is my favorite type of music. I go to the opera often. I will say that someone asked me downstairs for the mini interview. They asked if what do I do when I need solace or where I need some messages or from somewhere. What do I, and it's often I'll go to the opera, and I do believe, and I often get it from the performance, and I do think that there are these messages in that work that are directly related to when they were composed hundreds of years ago, and there is this kind of conversation between eras and stuff that is completely real, you know, and so I do believe in messages for certainly from times coming back and forward. Whether when it actually goes there, you know, depends what you're on, really.
On that note, okay, you guys sent in so many amazing questions. I'm just going to ask as many as we have time for. These are from the audience. In times when culture feels fractured, music can still reach across differences. Do you feel a responsibility for your work to engage politically, or does that come through naturally when writing truthfully?
I don't think it's a responsibility, but I think it's a possibility, and it's a really great thing when it does happen. But I think that if you take it on as a responsibility, you will just become a preacher, and nobody likes to be preached to, and you'll have a self-defeating body of work.
You know, it's hard for me because I mean I've written some very political songs which were written for another era, but now fit well in this one, a little too well. And I will say though that having grown up in the '70s with folk in the folk world, there was this tradition of total, you know, protest songs and everybody coming out and singing for the good of mankind, and you know, and that is something that where the whole concept of like not writing about politics was frowned upon. Like, how dare you write a love song? You have to write about the workers, you know, and that I think that's. Yeah, I think we need. I don't know if you can resurrect that, but I am fascinated by that period because it was so vehement and so strong and powerful, and you know, like, could you imagine Pete Seeger today? You know, with I mean, like, just, you know, like someone like that. But that takes a lot of work, and it's like a real discipline, and if somebody decided, yes, we are protest singers and all you can sing is protest songs, I'd be into supporting that. But as you said, it has to be like formidable.
How does your relationship to your own music change over time? And is there any specific song that has taken on a new meaning that you didn't expect?
You know, Hallelujah and Hallelujah, I have sung that for a long time now, and there were definite periods where I despised that song, and I was very resentful that it was sort of my most famous offering, and but then after he died, I sang it a lot, and so forth, and there are certain lines in that song that have hit me now that I totally was not cognizant of before, so that yeah, I've wanted to hate that song for years.
Any lines in particular that have taken on?
Well,
the
how to whatever. Maybe all I learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you, how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. That is, yeah. Until you've really gone through that, you can't really understand it.
Yeah,
That's a wild one.
Yeah.
I really like the process of getting farther from every song and like seeing people sing them, because as they sing them, it becomes not mine anymore. And I just like imagine that the song has its own life like far away from me, and it's very humbling. So pretty much like anything I've ever made, once it is out, I feel differently about it.
Lucy, your Goodreads reviews are excellent. What do you look for in what you read, and does it inform your own writing process?
I am always reading what I've been told to read. So I have a lot of friends with good taste, or I'll read a book and it'll be based on this other book, or that author really loves this other author, or I am saying like, oh, I'm reading this, and someone says like, have you checked this out? Or just wanting to get closer to people that I like and the people I love, and like it's a really like deep way to share something, because it takes so much duration and focus, and it's just another way to connect. So whatever comes my way.
Do you think of your songwriting as part of a queer canon or simply as human storytelling?
If you don't say yes, you.
Look, well, no. Somebody get me a cigarette. No, no.
Can you smoke in here?
I do now consider it a queer sort of canon that I created. At the time when I wrote it, I had no sort of plan to do that at all. I mainly just wanted to write about what was going on in my life, and I just couldn't lie. I'm not a good liar, so it just sort of happened that way. But now that I look back, and I do have so many wonderful people who come to me and tell me how much my songs meant to them when they came out, and how when they were struggling with their sexuality, how it really meant the world to them. I mean, I'm so whatever. That means everything for me. I mean, that's I couldn't ask for anything more fantastic than that. So yeah.
Lucy, do you feel a part of that lineage?
If that's happening for other people, it can never happen for me in the same way. So I have to kind of just take other people's word for that.
Both of you write songs that feel carefully constructed, almost architectural, yet emotionally raw. How do you know when a song is finished? Is it a feeling, a structure, or just a deadline?
It really changes per song, and some songs take like 8 years and others take 2 minutes, and sometimes I'll record it and put it out and then retroactively feel like it wasn't done. But I think that it's sort of this balance between persistence and giving up. Like a lot of art is knowing when you need to push through and when you need to stop. And sometimes it is just influenced by I'm hungry and I need to go get food. Like it's not so highfalutin. Maybe other people are, but for me it's kind of simple things that influence that.
I have a thing where if I am elated with something and I'm like, oh, it's great, it's amazing, I'll clock that and I'll be like, it's not finished. Because oftentimes I'll look at it the next day and I'll be like, oh, that's terrible. Like it's like this sort of elation thing. I've written the greatest song. It doesn't work that way. That being said, if I cry a little bit, it usually means it's done. There's like a little tear thing that happens. It's not like a weeping or anything, but it's just like a little emotional tear. I'm like, okay, that's it's done.
Pretty good affirmation that you've, all of the questions you guys sent in were amazing. I think we have time for one more. I apologize I couldn't get to all of them. Okay, when you revisit older songs, do they still feel true, or do they belong to a past version of yourself?
I have this like nagging voice on my shoulder that is like, don't say anything that you won't mean later, which I think is actually like bad. In some way, it's kept me like wanting to say things that are not petty and maybe like very deeply who I am, but also like that's counting out all the good, petty, shallow stuff that might also be kind of interesting. And so that's like something I need to like look into personally. Was that my
I
whole
can tell
answer?
you how to do that.
Okay.
Petty, shallow, gotcha.
Okay, cool. We'll talk later.
I just try to. I think of myself as a tree, and certain songs are certain branches and certain periods of my life, and they're all kind of equal and just different people, but from the same tree, a little bit. So.
Once again, on behalf of everyone at the New Yorker, I really want to thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Lucy and Rufus, this was such a blast.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.